A whole lot of that progress has been prodded, pushed, carried by the work of this one individual. Tammy and I are eyewitnesses to many of the ups and downs and ins and outs of this journey. Whatever the particular issue over the past 2.5 decades, often the driving question was and still is, what did Bruce say? And not only did Bruce make things happen with his donations, he takes an active role in helping set policy. And if you're working on a particular cause where Bruce doesn't like the policy that you're setting, he's not shy about letting you know. So Bruce is very engaged with where our community is going and where civil rights are going, not just in Utah, but across this country. So a little bit about Bruce's background. He was raised in Twin Falls, Idaho, I understand, in a conservative Mormon family. He attended BYU and graduated with a Bachelor's of Arts in Music Education and a Master of Arts in Computer Science. In the early 80s, Bruce and his faculty advisor started a software company that offered word processing software. That product was named WordPerfect. WordPerfect became the best-selling word processor in many areas of the world. So Bruce didn't stop with the accomplishment of creating this incredibly successful business. He took the money that he earned, a lot of it, and created the Brigham Bastian Foundation in the mid-1990s. Bruce and his foundation have supported many, many organizations and social change, human rights groups. He's been a leader for years on the national board of the Human Rights Campaign. And Bruce is never content to just be a donor. He devotes countless hours across this country to attending events and encouraging others to help step up and support justice. So Bruce has many honors. I'm not going to mention them all today, but one of the really cool ones is that he served on President Obama's Presidential Advisory Committee on the Arts. And that if you're in Washington, D.C. and you visit the HRC building, and you go in and say, I'm from Utah, not only do you know Bruce Bastian, they'll take you to the floor that is named after him. So he has made an impression across this country. Bruce is also a father, a grandfather, and soon, again, to be a husband. So please join me in welcoming Bruce Bastian.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Jane. I want to thank Weber State for this invitation to speak with you today. I really am honored to be here. I should have worn purple, and I'm sorry. I also want to pay a special tribute to Jane and Tammy Marquardt, making these events possible. Jane and Tammy are dear friends. I've known them for many years now. They are wonderful examples to me personally and fellow advocates for many great causes here in Utah and beyond. I want to start today by asking you to ask yourself a question. What is your main goal in life? What do you want to be when you grow up? No, really, what is your main goal? What pie in the sky? As you think about that, I think we should remember that for many human beings alive, millions, maybe billions, their main goal every day is to stay alive. They want to get enough food, water, shelter to just survive. Hopefully, all of us in this room today don't have to worry about that so much today, so we can concentrate on other things for this next 30, 40 minutes. So I want to concentrate on something else that I believe is very basic, very important, and common: happiness. When I was a boy, which is now many, many, many years ago, the world seemed like a very different place than it is today. We didn't have a TV. That was something very new, very rare, and very expensive. We had lots of books. We had a radio, one radio. We would gather around that radio in the evenings and listen to music and news programs, mostly music. We talked to each other a lot as a family, verbally, not text messaging. However, as different as the world was, I think the main goals were the same as they are today. My father went to work every day and many nights as well. My mother took care of the home and the kids. We lived on a farm, so my mother worked in the garden and my dad took care of the animals. We all wanted to survive and be a happy family. We just went about achieving those goals differently than most people do today. So while I cannot relate to some of the precise activities younger people engage in today, I think and I hope I can share some thoughts and things I have learned in my life that are similar, if not exactly the same, as things people encounter today in everyday life. So I want to share a short glimpse into my path to happiness in hopes it might give some ideas or insight to you in your search for happiness. I grew up spending a lot of time alone. That wasn't necessarily by choice because we didn't really live close enough to anyone I could call a friend. My friends were my brothers, my sisters, and our dog. I remember sitting in a large fruit tree in the front yard and pretending I was flying a big plane. It wasn't too long after the Second World War, so there were a lot of movies and stuff about the Air Force and war. And so I liked to pretend I was flying a bomber and I'd drop bombs on different things. Usually they were apricots or apples, but you know, I would find a clear spot of dirt and build a town of dirt roads, and I would divert water into ditches and pretend they were rivers running through the town. It's where I learned how to think and imagine and dream. I was a happy little boy. At least I thought I was a happy little boy. Maybe that's why I think it's so important today to allow and encourage kids to imagine and dream. Then I went to school, and I started learning what adults thought I should learn. Then I went to junior high and started to learn more creative things like music and art, and literature. I also had to learn how to fit in socially with other humans. I thought that was a little weird, but necessary. Then I went to high school, and the social interaction almost became more important than what we learned in classes. You could be the best student in school and still not have any friends. I thought that was really unfair. Each time I graduated to the next level of learning or society, my definition of my personal happiness changed somewhat. Now as I look back at that, I wonder if my definition of happiness changed because I made a decision to change it, or did it change because I thought my happiness and my ability to fit into my society were interdependent upon each other. I looked around at my friends, some of whom I thought were very happy, and some of whom I imagined weren't so happy. I had noticed for years that some people my age lived in families that weren't as happy as I thought mine was. Some people were poorer, some people were richer. That did make a difference in their clothes and their cars and their houses. It didn't make much difference in the level of happiness, though. What I did start to see as a teenager was how wealth seemed to make a difference in how people treat each other. Even as a teenager, it didn't seem right to me. It was as if some people were saying poor people couldn't be as happy as rich people or weren't as valuable as friends. That is an idea that took me many years to learn how untrue it is. Today I know many rich people who are very unhappy, and their quest for money doesn't really ever make them happier. I grew up as a member of the Mormon church. If any of you are Mormon, and I suspect probably many of you are, you know that the church becomes a huge part of your personal social network as a child, as a teenager, and also as an adult. I believe that's true with any religion, though. I don't think that's just the Mormon church. My definition of my personal happiness was greatly influenced by the church, not only by the teachings of the church, but also, and perhaps mainly, because of the social interaction I had or was expected to have with other members of the church. I wanted to fit in. We all do. I went to church and thought for me to be happy, I needed to do this and that. I needed to live a certain way. I didn't have to set a lot of my goals because most of them were set for me. What was I going to do when I graduated from high school? Go to BYU, of course. What was I going to do when I turned 19? Go on a mission, of course. What was I going to do when I came home from a mission? I was going to find the perfect girl, get married in a temple, and live happily ever after, of course. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm saying that I let others define my happiness. And I do not believe that is how we should live if we want to be truly happy. Well, I did go to BYU, as Jane said. That is when my personal definition of happiness really got challenged. It felt like my happiness was really interdependent on my social life, which was also very interdependent on church life. I started to believe the only way I could be happy was to accept everything I was being told about how to live my life. Did I really have to stop thinking for myself? Were all the strange ideas and feelings I had inside just bad or evil? I started to retreat back to being that boy who wanted to get away by himself and pretend and dream. I started reading things again that I thought were interesting just because. I started learning things that made me question other things that I had been taught or told. I started to question my own personal definition of my happiness. I think it is important to state here that I do not believe my definition of happiness is the same as anyone else's. I believe that every person's path to happiness is unique. That is why I believe we have to discover our own path to happiness and not have it defined by anyone else. I believe in that still small voice that prompts us to do certain things that are unique to us. I just don't believe that any church has a copyright on that. Changing our definition of personal happiness, I believe, is very much tied to learning who we really are. As we grow up, much and perhaps most of who we believe we are is defined by people around us. We have people who really love us. Yes, they really do love us. Tell us from birth who we are, what we should believe, and what our goals in life should be. It goes much further than a father telling his son or daughter that they should be a doctor or a lawyer. It goes to the point of actually having them tell us where we should live, or what our goals should be, or even whom we should marry. That might make the person telling us that very, very happy, but it may or not make us happy at all. We cannot live our life to make other people happy. It's not their happiness we seek, it's ours. We are also told by people all around us, many of whom really don't like us, maybe a religious person, maybe a politician, that we should change. We should be someone different than we really are. They don't approve of what we do, what we say, how we live. They want us to fit into their mold like they are. I suspect a lot of these people aren't really happy themselves either. They just want to make us as unhappy as they are. We need to be wary of those people, however, because they are always there. We grow older, if we have our own personal experiences, we learn about the world around us and the people around us, and we start to understand more about who we really are. We start to form our own views of happiness and what our happiness looks like. Then comes the dilemma. Do we admit to our families and our friends, or keep trying to live the life that they want us to live? More importantly, do we admit who we really are to ourselves? Do we let ourselves change, develop, let our definitions of our own happiness change, or do we just say, that's life, that's how it goes? At BYU, after BYU, I did get married. I married a wonderful woman. She was an absolutely amazing, loving mother. We had what many people thought was the perfect family. I was co-founder in a very successful company with offices and employees around the world. I became rich. Community leaders wanted to know what I thought. They wanted to meet with me. For Orem, Utah, I was the model citizen. I looked at the list of goals in my life, a list many people had helped me shape in my life, and I could check off almost everything on that list. Wow, I must be successful. I had made it. There was one problem, a big problem. I wasn't happy, and I knew I was not happy. So, oh shit. What do I do now? My mother told me once, bluntly, that I had made my bed and now I had better lie in it. You know, I had made decisions, commitments, and now I had to just keep going. I had to endure to the end. Being happy had nothing to do with it. Happiness, after all, wasn't intended for this life. It was for the afterlife. You know, well, maybe. But when you're unhappy in this life, why are you suddenly going to become happy when you're dead? I couldn't understand. Aren't we as humans better people for ourselves and to others if we're happy? Yes, I started asking too many questions. I would look in the mirror and not like the person looking back at me. I was a liar. I was not being honest to the people I claimed to love. I was not being honest with the people I worked with. And I was lying to myself. I was gay. I knew it. The main person I had been trying to convince most of all that I was not gay was looking right back at me in that mirror. Coming out was not easy for me. I had to tell all those people, those dear people around me, that I had been lying, that I was not the person they thought I was. I had to come to terms with the fact that I could not live as I had been living if I really wanted to be happy. I was very scared, as most people are when they come out, that I was going to lose the love of friends and family because I was not the person they thought. It was not an easy decision, but it was probably one of the most, if not the most important decisions in my life. I was very lucky. I did not, in fact, lose the love of my family or my close friends or my work colleagues. I did not face the backlash that many people do. But my life did change, slowly, but over time, pretty much completely. I started to learn a lot about myself, who I really am. I started developing my own goals. I started developing my own idea of what my happiness looked like. It was so liberating. I was suddenly free to admit how I felt, what I believed, and how I wanted to live. Even though I had found the courage to come out to myself and those close to me, I still had a really hard time standing up in front of people and saying, I'm gay. Oops. That took time. I was still not fully comfortable with myself. I couldn't look at myself and say, you know, what a great guy you are. I didn't really like myself. And some people say, that's crazy. You know, you were successful. You had money. People looked up to you. How could you not love yourself? Well, I didn't. I didn't believe in myself. I didn't believe totally that everything was okay here inside. So now the bigger question, another big question. How do you learn to love yourself? Well, first, we have to understand that the person we're trying to love is not that person that everyone has told us we are. The person we want to love is the real us, the real person. I had to learn to love the real Bruce Bastian, not the Bruce Bastian everybody thought I was or told me I was. And I think, you know, sometimes we need to just learn how to respect ourselves. We're never going to get everybody to love us. That's just not real. And I don't think it's even desirable. But maybe we can get at least most people to respect us, even if they don't agree with us or don't personally like us. Maybe we can try first on respect, and then let love kind of graduate after that. As I got more and more involved with being an advocate for others and somewhat of an activist in the LGBTQ and human rights in general, I learned that standing up for others is more gratifying than just standing up for yourself. I also learned that being willing to sign your name to what you believe is very, very important. When I first established the B.W. Bastian Foundation, thank you, Jane, for reminding me it was in the 90s. I had forgotten. I wanted all our gifts and grants to be sent out from anonymous. I thought that was safer here in Utah. Have you ever noticed gifts from Mr. Anonymous? You might notice them, but I bet you don't remember them. It was like helping someone or something that you believed in, but not having the courage to tell them who you are. The first time I had the courage to stand up and say, this is Bruce Bastian, I'm supporting this, and I hope you will stand with me. Wow. The response I got from people who wanted to stand with me was amazing and gratifying and empowering. I'd always known that it's important to put your money where your mouth is. But now I know it's important to put your name where your money is, and your efforts, and everything else about you. So in my journey, I finally learned it's okay to be me. Not only was it okay, it was necessary. I was learning that what I have to say means more if I truly believe in what I'm saying, and if I'm willing to put my name and my reputation out there to back it up. Was I finally happy? As I said, coming out was liberating for me. I believe coming out as whoever you really are is liberating for anyone who does it. Now, I'm not talking about just coming out as an LGBTQ person. I'm talking about coming out as a Democrat to your Republican family. I'm talking about coming out and being honest to say, I don't really like chocolate. I'm talking about coming out as your real, authentic self, being who you are, and letting the world know it. Well, unless maybe you're a nudist. I don't know how that would work. Still. So it was very liberating. It set you free. It set you free to grow, to learn, to meet other people who not only understand how you feel and how you think, but embrace it. It allows you to look in the mirror and say, damn, you're okay. I like you. It's empowering. I believe we as happy, authentic people can make a bigger difference in the lives of others, can make a much bigger difference than if we are not. People will be attracted to that happiness. I believe we can better stand up for what we believe in and generate goodwill and love, which we all know the world needs so much of today. I believe that as we go about doing good things for humanity, we are the ones who in the end are more blessed with more happiness coming back to us. So back to the question, what is your main goal in life? My main goal is to be authentic and happy. The only way I know I can be happy is to try to do as much as I can to make the lives of others better so they can concentrate on more than just survival. I must be truthful and authentic in how I put myself out there for others to see. Because believe me, they will see. You are watched. Whether you know it or not, we are all watched. And people learn from what we do, how we act, and what we say. It's our job to make sure what they see and learn is what we really believe. Am I happy? Well, I can say honestly, I'm happier than I've ever been in my lifetime, which is nice to be able to say. However, I have to also add, I'm not as happy as I plan to be a year from now. Happiness, I believe, is a process and not a moment in time. Thank you again for the opportunity to share my thoughts with you today. Thank you. I'm happy to take some questions. I don't know when we're supposed to end. 10 minutes? 15 minutes? Until you're tired of me? 5 minutes? What? Anybody have a question? Yes.
Was there, I know you kind of walked through your life story, but was there a moment when you looked in the mirror and said, now's the time I need to start being me? Was there something that happened, a moment in time?
Yes.
What triggered that?
I thought you were going to say, is there a time when when I knew I was gay, and I knew I was gay in junior high and high school, but I honestly thought then I was the only gay person in the world. But the time I realized that the first time I actually kissed a boy, and I had kissed many girls. I mean, I was married. But the first time I kissed a boy, it's like, oh, now I understand what the movies are about. And that's when it was exciting and terrifying all at the same moment. Because I knew that, I am not the kind of person that can just push aside what I really feel and believe inside. I've never been able to do that. I know there are people who do that. I have people I know personally who do that, and they seem happy I've never had the chance to really delve in because I don't believe they are. I don't believe they could be. But I'm not that kind of person.
I have a question about your children and how you navigate coming out and being your authentic self and still consideration for your family and your part you play in there.
Did y'all hear the question? How do you navigate coming out and being authentic to your children? That's an ongoing difficulty. My wife and I, who has passed away now, I thought we tried to treat the subject amicably, if not openly. I told my kids before I moved out from the house that I was gay. At least 2 of the 4 were too young to even understand what the hell I was talking about. Their childhood was not easy because of what I did, but as adults, I think they're 4 of the most loving, strong men I have ever known. So I'm not apologetic for what I did, and I am still working on my personal relationship with them. All 4 of them have been invited to our wedding. But I'm not sure if any of the 4 of them will show up. So, I don't know. You can't lie to kids. They're too smart. They see too much. You can pretend to be who you are with anyone, and anyone who really knows you will see through it. So that's why I think it's so important to define your happiness on your authentic self, because you're never going to get away with it otherwise.
Bruce, I'm glad I met you. I've heard a lot of stories about you over the years, some good, some bad. But well, I'm just being authentic here. But I'm really impressed with your authenticity. And I just want you to know that.
With my what?
With your authenticity.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, I'm very impressed, and I want you to know that. And I just wish that this ballroom were full of people who could have heard.
So do I.
This.
I worked so hard on this.
Well, you did. I'm hoping there's another time when we can make this happen with people that really need to hear this. But here's my question. What was the worst experience you had when you came out with someone? And what was the most inspiring experience you had with someone when you came out? So what was hurtful and what was helpful?
I was really afraid to come out to my parents. I mean, when I decided to come out, I made some phone calls, and my older sister, Connie, whom Clint loves, and she loves him. I think I've lost a sister, but whatever. I called her. I used to fly to Europe a lot. I mean, like every month almost. And I would fly through O'Hare in Chicago, and she lived in Chicago. And so, you have a long layover, and that was before fancy airline lounges, so I called her. And I was really emotional, and I said, I have something I really need to tell you. And I told her, and she said, oh, Brucey, I've kind of suspected for a long, long time. You know, I'll love you even more now. She said, my only concern is for your safety, because this was in the 80s, and you read about gay men getting beat up and murdered, especially in big cities. She lived in Chicago. So her real concern for me was my safety. She had nothing about being gay. That didn't bother her at all. And I was like, wow, that was easy. And then I called my cousin, and she said, oh, Bruce, I've always known you were gay. I said, well, why didn't you tell me? My brother-in-law, who worked at WordPerfect, kind of dragged it out of me and gave me all the hugs and everything. And then he proceeded to go around and tell all my family. He told my parents, told my brothers and sisters, everybody told other people at the company. Oh, I felt so dishonored. He's my brother-in-law. We later fired him, thank God. And it's like, you know. So I've had people, good Mormon people, and I won't go into details, but they'll say, you know, we still have your name on the temple roll. We pray for you every day. And I just want to say, no, you're not praying for me. You're praying for you. This is not something I'm dealing with. This is something you're dealing with. So stop. So I had a lot of stories. I should write a book about stories. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your life story. I appreciate that. So from your perspective, where do you think the LGBT community should go from here on out? It seems like we're under attack again. So what should we be doing as a community to help each other out and kind of exclude each other out?
So the most powerful thing I've seen in my advocacy work is personal stories. People cannot argue with your personal story. Honest, authentic, personal stories. If you're not gay, maybe your stories of someone you know who is gay. Their struggles. We have to be willing, once again, that's how we got marriage passed, was personal stories. We have to be willing to share our personal stories, and we have to stick together. We have to love each other. We have to know that we have each other's backs. We have to stand up to the politicians, and yes, even the religious leaders, and say, you know, what you're telling us is not true. We have to. That's really the only way forward. The equation hasn't changed. Neither have they. They've just kind of figured out what didn't work, and so they're trying new things.
So, I'm trying to remember a story you told me when you were an instructor at BYU. Did you play the clarinet, if I remember?
I played clarinet and saxophone at BYU, except in the marching band I played drums.
And then you started writing code because of marching band patterns, and then remind me what happened when that program grew and what happened.
My two older brothers both worked for MIT. My oldest brother, worked for IBM. My oldest brother went to MIT on a full scholarship, and as a freshman taught physics, although he had never taken physics. I said we had a lot of books at home. We had a lot of books at home. He was a mathematical genius, and they both got into computers, so I was interested in computers. So as I wrote, I was a marching band director for 5 years, and I had to sit down every summer and work out the movements, the charts we call them, they all had to be set to music, so they were very geometric and very rigid in timing. So I thought, why do I do this? Why can't I just put certain things on a computer and let the computer help me get from point A to point B? So I did that. That was my thesis in 3D graphics. And I started that as a graduate student in music, and then the music department fired me because I didn't have a PhD. And that was interesting because the music department didn't offer a PhD. So it was purely political. So I said, I went over to the computer science department. The I think the same day. I said, what do I do? And they said, well, have you considered changing your major emphasis to computer science? Okay. So it took me a year longer, but my master's degree is in computer science with a minor emphasis in music instead of the other way around. And I'll take that back to the big fruit tree in the front yard. It was like, I've always been the kind of person, if I can imagine something happening, I say, well, why can't it? If this is something I can see, why can't I make it happen? So it's carried on here. I mean, gay marriage, we have to fight this in the legislature, we have to fight this here, I said, no, we have to fight it in the courts. That's where we win. We have this thing called the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. That's where we have to win. And that's where we won.
Bruce, thank you for coming to Weber State and sharing your story with us. Your story resonates very strongly with me. I'm an ally of the LGBT community.
I know you are a great ally.
But I faced an important turning point in my life years and years ago and had to take control of my own life in a similar way. And what I learned in that process was very similar to what you experienced and told us here. And that is, before you can possibly love anyone else, you have to love yourself first. You have to have that respect and self-confidence in yourself first before you can truly love somebody else, anybody else.
Right, thank you.
And, I thank you for being willing to share your story with us. It's really important. Thanks.
Thank you very much. That's very gratifying. As I said, I think the most powerful thing we can ever tell someone is our story. I told it often. You've heard it often. This one was a little different, I hope. Any other questions? I wish you were more populated, but you've been a wonderful, wonderful, gracious group to share this with. If you want to invite me back sometime, I'll try to change it up and do something different. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce, again, very much for coming. It's been great to have you here. I would have made some more comments, but I think President White captured everything that needed to be said from our point of view. But let's give Bruce a round of a hand. And of course, a large thank you to Jane and Tammy Marquardt for their support and their efforts to make this series happen. Well, have a nice day and travel safe if it's still snowing.